terrible about Ray Clemens, wasn't it? Packed in football altogether. Signed forever. Only kidding, only kidding. And that Billy Whitelaw, when he went back to London, he said, what do you think of the people in Toxteth? He said, well, I think it's with the unemployment and all that. He said, well, did it benefit you going there? He said, oh, yeah. He said, I got a coloured telly, an Hoover. And there was a crowd of women, you see, a crowd of women in Tesco's. Went for the wine and spirits. Come out with all kinds of loaves and everything. All singing their heads off. Got stopped by a copper. He said, who do you think of that? This one said, the Luton Girls Choir. This fella turns down to his missus, he said, you know when we're making love of a night? Why don't you start moaning and groaning? Not like you read about in these books. She said, okay then. So that night they're making love. He said, go on, start moaning and groaning. She said, okay. When are you going to finish the back kitchen? But you see, no, Liverpool's well noted for sayings. Now, when the first sailing ship come out, they only had holes in the deck to let the smoke out. Holes in the deck. And there was 2 scousers on the deck this day. And the captain walked along, and he fell down the hole. And one scouser turned around the other scouser, he said, this is where the fun will start.
On the Waterfront, title of a film. What a film. On the Waterfront. I could have been a contender, Marlon Brando, New York. I'm going to be someone, I am. Every kid in Liverpool in living memory. Some make records, some break records, some break windows. Some become footballers or actors, or both. Others write plays and poems and become painters and decorators. A few have no talent at all and turn to crime or politics, but an awful lot over the years have become comedians. The best of them at their best tell ever so laconically of sickness and violence and robbery, even the occasional glimpse of pleasure, of prejudice and fear and man's total bewilderment. But they tell it through laughter, the only way. It's a well-established fact in this city that if you can get a man laughing, it's much easier to kick him where it hurts. It's also a fact that we don't take very well to foreigners. You know, people from Bolton or Milton Keynes or even Holland. We particularly don't like the Dutch because they speak better English than what we do. And perhaps deliberately too. The entrance to the port of Liverpool is difficult to manoeuvre. You've really got to want to come here to sail down our river, pal. And so we send out a pilot to navigate them in. Like a food taster for an emperor.
Amongst all the different nationalities, you find obviously personality. Well, this was a particular coaster, and the pilot went aboard and he asked the relevant questions that you have to know: the draft, the length, the speed, the breadth, and the height of the mast. And as he went along, he said, "What is your draft?" And the master said, 3 meters 80. So he said, "Well, could you give me that in feet?" Because that was before we went metric. And he said 3 meters 80. So worked it out with pen and paper. He said, "Okay, what's your length, Captain?" 68 meters. He said, "Well, can you give me that in feet, Captain?" 68 meters. So he worked it out. He said, "Okay." And he got up off Birkenhead. He's going to the Manchester Canal, and the captain came and said to him, "Pilot, how far to the lock?" He turned around and he said, 6 leagues, Captain.
It's often been said about pilots, about the relation that we have with the masters of vessels, and to be fair, it's a very good relation. They spoil us to death, to be quite honest, while we're doing the job. There was a particular occasion concerning a German master, a young master, fair, it was the way he treated the pilot when he walked on board. The pilot walked aboard, said, "How do you do?" asked all the usual questions, and gave the master his paper, his newspaper. It's traditional. We always give them a newspaper, the latest paper, when we get on board. And the master said, "Thank you very much," and threw it over the side of the ship. He then furnished the pilot with a cup of coffee, and the pilot said, "Thank you very much, Captain," and threw that over the side of the ship.
The docks. The dockers are all right, I'll tell you. I worked on the docks once, in the 60s, as an insecurity guard. Just before I got married, the gang I was supposed to watch over gave me 48 tins of salmon and a crate of whiskey as a wedding present. And I'll never know to this day where they got them from. Mind you, I know who might. Brian Jacques.
Hiya, my name's Brian Jacques. I'm a Scouser. I live in Liverpool. This is Liverpool Docks. I used to work down here. This is a good place to start, isn't it? The Dockers' nickname's a peculiar thing because everybody has a name, although most of them don't know what their names are, but they're quite humorous, a lot of them. There's a lad down there, they call him High Noon, because he always says to the others, "Look, you keep the job going, because I'm shooting at 12. And then you got all these fellas like, well, there's the Bobby Baiter. He keeps saying, "Let's get stuck into this copper." That's when they're working on copper, sort of thing. There's Lord Nelson, "Keep your eye out for the boss," he says. And there's a fella down there called the Drug Addict, because as the cargo's coming over the side of the ship, he say, "There's some morphia here." One of the oldest ones on the docks, the diesel fitter, goes around pulling stuff out of cases saying, "Diesel fitter." When the lads are working on the set, lifting stuff, there's a guy called the London Fog who won't lift, or the weightlifter who waits while you lift, or there's a fella called the handbag, because his mates have been carrying him for years. Oh, right, there's a lot of them.
No, Lenny!
Originally, when we started down here, the old tram cars ran from Seaforth all around the world, and you finished up Breck Road. The 18 was our car, you know, that was the Dockers' car. And within a matter of months, they'd moved over to a bus service, and they were starting to put one-man buses on. And the story went around the line that two lads were standing outside Bootle Hospital, 7 o'clock at night after working overtime, and this bus arrived on the front, one-man bus, and one turned to the other and said, "This is yours, I'll get the following one," you know. Yeah. It's spontaneous, the sense of humour. You know, the people getting on the bus, when you know, they just couldn't get used to the bus services, the old type docker, the traditionalists. And he said, "A 10, son," you know, to the driver, and the driver said, "In the box," and he bent down and he said to the box, "A 10, please." You know, these are the ones. Very, very fun.
What about that fella down there? The key foreman was shouting at him, and he said, "Listen, you shouldn't be shouting at that lad like that, because the Japs give him a very bad time." He said, "Well, I didn't know that." And he went up to this fella and he said, "Listen, I'm sorry for shouting at you, lad." He said, "Oh, that's all right." He said, "I believe you had a hard time off the Japs." He said, "Oh, yeah, that's right." He said, "Where was you, in Burma or what?" He says, No, he says, "I was working on a Maru boat last week and they wouldn't give me no hot water for the tea."
I thought we got here now, was it?
The stewards, you know.
Yeah, go on,
That steward went down the south end and he went aboard the ship and done an arbitration. And the supervisor said, "Tell them they're getting sweet up here, boys. Doesn't warrant it." We come back to the gang and he says to the gang, "Look, boys, he told me you're getting nothing." He said, "I'd advise you to take it."
I like that. But after the 6 weeks strike, working at the Lampert boat, you know, and after the 6 weeks, they come back and they open the hatches up, you know, and so they're all forgotten, like they're overlooked it. But there's a camel in the Swedes deck looking up, you know, starving and everything. So someone said, "God blimey, we forgot about the camel," you know. So they got the inspector down, you know, from the RSPCA, and he had a look at it. He said, "Everything looks okay with the camel." He said, "It needs a feed, a drink, and a bit of exercise." So they fed it, they give it a drink, and they landed it on the quay. "Anyone going home for the dinner?" So Percy Pickles said, "I'm going home," you know. So they said, "Yeah, I'll take it out," you know. So Percy gets on his back and he's going to the gate, you know, on the camel. And the bobby said, "Where are you going with that?" And he said, "Up Sand Hills."
You know where you're swinging the legs, what do they call it down here? Congestion of the quay. And this fella goes down to the doctors for the doctor's note, you know, but he's really swinging the lead like. And he goes in and he says, "I'm not well, doctor. I'm suffering from depression and I could do with some time off." And the doctor says, well, let's take a look at you, strip off to the waist. And he gives him a good medical and that, and he says, I can find nothing wrong with you. He says, you're fit for work. I can't find nothing wrong with you. It must be the drink. And this fellow says, well, I'll come back when you're not bevied.
The lads went down there, knew in the army, and the containerisation had just come about. There's a 40-footer. One of the lads staggered in there Monday morning, 8 o'clock, looking for a cup of tea. And what did he say, Brian? There's no chairs or tables in the canning. That was a container, that was containerisation.
Yeah. The back-breaking days are all over, because there's no more handball or graft. It's all on containers or pallets, the cargo of seafaring craft. Your hands cannot get dirty, for industrial gloves you'll wear. The docker of the 80s, you'll never hear him swear, for he's been re-educated, and there's no one more surprised than the docker of the 80s, who's been containerised. Now no more big cranes lie idle, the ships are fast turning round. They've built the new docks up at Seaford, all part of our own holy ground. And Liverpool is on the move, the sleeping giant awakes. The greatest port in all the world, and we've got what it takes. So when I die, don't bury me in Anfield or in Ford. Just lock me in a container for the crane to lift on board. Hey. Couldn't you just imagine a clipper ship coming in here under full sail? He did, you know, with a cargo of ivory, apes and peacocks. Just look at it now. It's funny how nature takes over again, isn't it? The seagulls and the pigeons rule the roost here. But once upon a time, it was the world's busiest docks. Liverpool, the gateway to the northwest. Nearly 9 mile of docks with work for over 20,000 dockers one time. There's only 3,000 dockers and about 2 miles of docks working now. The pens and boxes have closed down now. The lads are being paid off with redundancy money. Yeah, it's a case of don't open the box, take the money.
One sick joke to another, from a docks that are dying to a community that's only killing itself because it's getting murdered. Toxteth, 1981. This city's been battered and robbed for years, so it's hardly surprising that finally some of us are robbing and battering ourselves. As you know, a lot of black people live here. Well, they don't live, many of them barely survive. They're Liverpool people. They belong here. And many families have done so for several generations. But if all we've got to offer the people of Toxteth, black, white, humpbacked, legless, lost or green with little purple spots, is mass unemployment, poor facilities, police harassment and the pick of any slum they might want to live in, can we blame them for their anger and passion and revenge and fight and despair? I don't think so. But listen boys, do me a favour, don't do it in Wavertree because that's where I live. Look at those kids, remember? 7 years old and lost in dreams of Batman and Robin. I was that age when I got my first autograph book. The first autograph was mine. Alan Bleasdale, 40 Liverpool Road, Eighton, future captain of Liverpool and England. I must have been a comedian then, because that was certainly my first joke. But kids tell jokes like we've all forgotten to tell them, with no timing at all and total sincerity.
What do you get if you bury a pig underneath an apple tree?
I don't know. What do you get if you bury a pig under an apple tree?
A bacon apple!
Oh.
What do you get when you cross sponge with a tin of beans?
A sponge with a tin of beans, what would you get?
A cake that can blow its own candles out.
Good heavens, a rude one, Jamie.
Why do elephants have yellow soles on their feet?
I don't know.
Yellow soles? No, go on,
So
what?
that they can hide upside down in custard.
And all these children come from the Royal Waversley School for the Blind. In fact, they're all registered blind children.
Did you hear about the Irishman who failed his driving test?
No.
He swerved to run over a cat.
I've got another one. Did you hear about the Irishman who tried to rock around the clock?
No, what happened?
Fell off the mantelpiece.
God, grief!
What about the fella who was climbing over the wall at Everton? And the policeman said to him, "Get back in."
You're all enjoying yourselves? Yes. I'll soon put a stop to that. I was walking down Scotty the other day and I seen this drunk sitting down in the gutter.
Child entertainers. I don't know whether I'm horrified or amused, but I'm certainly fascinated. I've never known a city like Liverpool for 10-year-old comics and 3-year-old beauty queens and, hey, Jason, stop crying, take your dummy out and learn this guitar riff. Actually, I think I'm horrified. Paul McNally, 10 years old.
My mum said to me dad this morning, "Hey, why did you come home half drunk last night?" He said, I ran out of money. Have you heard Maggie Thatcher's new way to solve the unemployment crisis? She's put the school leaving age up to 52. These educational cuts, well, they're not half bad. It's really affected our school, you know. I mean, because we're writing on slates now, and I fell off the roof twice last week. Paddy and Mick went in for an intelligence test. Mick went in first. The doctor said, "Right, Mick, what hand have I got up?" He said, "You're right." He said, "Very good. Right, now, what hand have I got up now?" He said, "Your left." The doctor said, "Very good, you've passed the intelligence test. Go and tell Paddy to come in now." So he went outside and he said to Paddy, "Hey, Paddy, it's easy." He puts his right hand up first and he says, "What hand have I got up?" And you say, "You're right." And he puts his left hand up and he says, "What hand have I got up now?" And you say, "Your left." And then it's all over. When Paddy went in, the doctor was warming his hands by the fire. And Paddy said, "Oh, that's not fair. You're shuffling them."
You know that poster, redundant to 16? I wonder if Paul's only got 6 years left, but he might be lucky. These kids are pleasant and clean and bright and come equipped with lovely teeth. If they were the same age as me, they'd have had the cream. As it is now, 20 years later, well, you know what happens to cream in the end.
Well, you usually get about one proper job a month that there's an interview for. I've had no luck so far. But I remember a couple of weeks ago, like, people are telling me this is funny. I'll see the funny side of it, but when I had an interview in the morning, you know, I got all my stuff ready. And I couldn't sleep so bad, 1 o'clock in the morning. I got up and thought, I'll go for a quick walk. And I'll get to sleep when I come back. And I went for a walk, got half a mile down the road and I got moped.
There are no jobs about, full stop, you know. You're right away, but there's just nothing happening. Or people will say, you know, we'll put you on file and when a vacancy sort of arises, we'll let you know, you know.
And nothing happens?
No.
No. Have you thought about any of these jobs in Germany that are advertised here, Kat?
Joking. I couldn't afford the bus fare.
Yeah, I like it.
There are a few gestures on the way. There's the Youth Opportunity Scheme, which is sadly turned out to be like inviting someone to dinner, giving them a chair at the table, letting them have the soup course and then kicking the chair away from underneath them, good style. This is the Rural Agricultural Scheme in Toxteth. They're doing themselves proud. They've created a garden on a roof on a hill in Liverpool, eh? But the irony, I mean, look at them. They're making flowers grow.